The topic that I chose was Mount Tambora, 1815 and the Year with No Summer, by Michaela Geisy, myself. My presentation outline consists of a thesis statement, the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 changed the world. Some supporting arguments that I have are Mount Tambora's eruption, its history, and how it challenged the science and research systems, effects on the Earth systems, how it was cold, rainy, and in a season of drought in different locations, effects on the population, such as migration, hunger, and disease. First off, I want to show you where this volcano is located. So in the first picture here, it is located in Indonesia, and you can see the pin is dropped way down here. Well, I zoomed in so I could show you where it is located more specifically. As you can see here, you can see the Mount Tambora here, and it is located on the northern coast of West Nusa Tenggara, Sumbawa of Indonesia. History and eruption of Mount Tambora. So it's classified as a stratovolcano, which is made of buildup of composite volcanic materials. One characteristic that stands out is how steep the stratovolcano has become. As you can see in this illustration here of Mount Tambora, the sides are pretty steep. Keep this picture in mind as I go to the next slide after I'm done talking about this one. It was inactive for more than 400 years, and after the eruption, it has been silent since then as well. In 1812, Tambora awakened and started to show signs of activity. The locals noticed these ash clouds that are coming out, but there was no eruption that followed. On April 5th in 1815, the first eruption occurred and lasted 5 days. Mud flows began that contained ash, debris, and water, and this was just the beginning of the eruption of Mount Tambora, and they had no idea, the locals had no idea that another eruption was about to occur. On April 10th and 11th in 1815, Tambora literally exploded, and with this explosion, it was heard as far as 1,615 miles away. Ash fell at least 810 miles away, and the mountain erupted more than 12 cubic miles of lava, which included fast flows of aerosol gas and solid materials. Everything came to an end on April 17th. The global death count was 200,000, which was indirect and direct causes from this eruption here. Mount Tambora used to be the highest mountain in the archipelago, but after the eruption, it lost 4,757 feet of its altitude. This cannot be compared to any other major event, as this eruption was the most powerful in history so far. And as I mentioned before, just keep this picture in mind as I go to the next slide. So as you can see, Mount Tambora lost 1/3 of its elevation when it exploded. Right here, as you see this crater looking thing, it is actually called a caldera, which is 4.3 miles wide and a little more than a half mile deep. A caldera is where magma is stored, and when an eruption occurs, the magma empties, leaving unsupported rock that encloses the top of the chamber, which caves, leaving the appearance of a crater, as we see here. Earth's weather systems. Europe had a rainy and cold summer that was detrimental to the farmers growing crops. Indonesia had ashfall destroy crops and drinking water. China and India experienced drought. Overall, there were dry and warmer conditions in Eastern Europe and wet and cold conditions in Western Europe. Due to these conditions, farmers were not able to produce crops, with the environmental climate being cold and too wet, and other areas did not get enough rain to provide nutrients to crops. Their main food sources were bread and rice, which they were not able to get because of the failed harvest, with the environmental conditions not being supportive of those things. Due to the failed harvest, inflation of food prices occurred. In return, riots had broke out due to increased prices in food. Prices stayed high until 1820 in England. However, France tried to stabilize their prices so their people could still be able to eat and they didn't have the riots and everything breaking out. People were selling their children for the return of food, which that just shows you, if you're a parent, how detrimental and scarce the food was. They wanted to survive. Science and research systems. Scientists had no explanation for the weather being cold and rainy in Europe. Some blamed a comet, lightning conductors, sunspots, ice floating in the northern Atlantic, and some blamed the weather on the gods. Meteorologists had no theory to offer for the weather, but astrologers Ventans studied glacier variations, coming to the theory of the Ice Age. So, throughout trying to figure out what was going on, what was changing the climate through Mount Tambora, they actually came to a different conclusion of the Ice Age, which is 100% correct that there was an Ice Age. But they never came to the conclusion of why the climate actually changed. It wasn't until 1883 that another huge eruption occurred, and atmospheric effects were studied, concluding that the gases from the volcano affected the climate, such as the aerosol gases that are emitted when the ash and lava flows from the volcano. From scientists trying to figure out the cause of the climate change, many other theories have been made, and it has improved seasonal forecasts, monitoring needs, and geoengineering. Scientists today still study and reconstruct the eruption of Tambora to develop better tools and methods to determine climates. The population. Cholera and typhus disease broke out across the globe. People left their homes due to the weather and invaded cities to search for better living conditions. Switzerland suffered the most in Europe. They experienced flooding, crop failure, death from starvation. Desperate villagers ate natural foods such as carcasses of dead animals, cattle fodder, leaves of nettles, swine food. Europe had an abundance of homeless people, and in the riots, some had signs that said bread or blood. As you can see here, people um, are buying stones, and their little children here are begging them to stop buying stones and to get bread. They just wanted some actual food. And on their faces, you can see how serious this event was and how stressful it was on them, how they just wanted things to get back to normal. But they had to do what they had to do to survive in these unnatural conditions due to this volcano eruption. Overall, the eruption of Tambora jump-started scientists and researchers' interest in climate, and in the meantime made other discoveries. It also changed how scientists and researchers thought of the world. Many different groups of scientists researched and found no conclusions until 67 years later when they explored the atmosphere. And that is once again after another eruption occurred and the climate had changed slightly, but not as extreme as when Mount Tambora erupted, and that's when they kind of put two and two together and explored the atmosphere and came to the conclusion that it was the aerosol gases that were emitted from the volcanic eruption, and that changed the chemicals in the atmosphere, which then, as a result, changed the climate. Here are all my references. I have links that can be selected if need be, and here are my picture references as well. Thank you.